Welcome back, dear friends, and a warm hello to the first-time visitors of my channel. Today we're diving into someone who truly sent chills down our spines, someone who was not only the Dark Lord's most loyal follower, but a force of nature all her own. Terrifying, eccentric, and wildly fascinating. Yes, I'm talking about Bellatrix Lestrange. She's surrounded by a whirlwind of fan theories, and today we'll explore the most intriguing of them. Sit back and enjoy the ride. Number 1. Bellatrix fought in the Battle of Hogwarts after giving birth. Sounds wild, right? But if you follow the timeline, that's exactly what it suggests. Bellatrix's daughter, Delphi, whose father was none other than Voldemort himself, was born shortly before the Great Battle of Hogwarts. That means Bellatrix entered the battlefield already a mother. Fans point to Tonks as a precedent. She, too, fought soon after giving birth. This paints Bellatrix not just as a sinister figure, but as physically unstoppable, ready to kill and die for the Dark Lord, no matter the personal cost. Number 2, Harry's hatred for her was fueled by the Horcrux. Why did Harry react to Bellatrix with such raw, visceral rage? Sure, there's the murder of Sirius, the torture of Neville's parents. But what if there's more? The Horcrux inside Harry bound him to Voldemort's emotions, thoughts, and instincts. And Bellatrix wasn't just a Death Eater, she was practically his second in command. Perhaps Harry's overwhelming emotions were a reflection of Voldemort's own closeness to her. Emotions Harry could feel whether he realized it or not. Number 3, Bellatrix and Rodolphus never had children, by Voldemort's will. Their marriage always seemed off. There's no warmth, no affection, and no children. Coincidence? Maybe not. Some theories suggest Bellatrix was either forbidden to bear children or chose not to as a personal sacrifice. A child would have tied her down, made her less useful in the field. And for Bellatrix there was nothing more important than serving the Dark Lord. Number 4, her marriage was just for show. Speaking of Rodolphus Tinst, did Bellatrix ever care for him at all? Many fans say no, their union wasn't a love story but a political arrangement, a formal step in the pure-blood aristocracy. From a young age, Bellatrix was captivated by Voldemort. Maybe not in a romantic sense, but in total, unquestioning adoration. She revered his power, his will, his very existence. Rodolphus? Just part of the scenery. Number 5, Bellatrix tortured the Longbottoms to find Harry. We know Bellatrix and her fellow Death Eaters drove Frank and Alice Longbottom to madness. Canon says they were trying to discover Dumbledore's whereabouts. But what if the real goal was to find Harry? He was the last to see Voldemort on the night of his downfall. Maybe Bellatrix believed that finding Harry could lead to bringing her master back. And when she couldn't locate the boy directly, she turned to those closest to him, members of the Order of the Phoenix. Number 6, Bellatrix wasn't insane, just utterly devoted. Was she mad? At first glance, absolutely. But dig a little deeper and things aren't so clear-cut. Bellatrix wasn't a raving lunatic, and she was a cold, calculated fanatic. She knew exactly what she was doing and did it with purpose. Yes, she was dramatic. Yes, she relished pain. But everything she did was in service to Voldemort. That makes her even more terrifying. Her cruelty wasn't madness, it was choice. Number 7, Bellatrix was more evil than Voldemort himself. Bold statement, right? But hear it out. Voldemort was cold, calculated. He killed with strategy, removed obstacles with precision. Bellatrix? She reveled in suffering. She didn't just kill, she toyed with her victims. If Voldemort was a frozen dagger, Bellatrix was a raging fire. She was unhinged malevolence, evil, unrestrained. In some ways, she may have surpassed even her master in sheer brutality. Number 8. Bellatrix deliberately lost the duel to Molly Weasley. The Great Hall burned with magic. Spells flew like lightning. Bellatrix laughed as she duelled, graceful and deadly. Then Molly Weasley stepped forward. Her voice thundered, "Not my daughter, you bitch!" The room froze. The duel began, a mother's fury against a murderer. But some fans believe Bellatrix didn't fight to win. She fought to end. By that point, Voldemort's defeat was close. The tide had turned. Bellatrix saw the fall coming. Azkaban was no longer a prison she feared. It was a cage she refused to return to. She had lived for the Dark Lord. If he fell, what was left? This wasn't surrender. It was a warrior's death. She met Molly's rage, not with panic, but with twisted joy. She smiled even as she cast. Bellatrix was a dueling expert. She had held her own against Kingsley Shacklebolt and Hermione Granger at once, but in this moment she let herself slip. A second too late, a shield not raised. When Molly's curse hit, Bellatrix exploded. She collapsed, falling backward, arms splayed, rolling rights. No scream, no fight, just silence. A death too clean for a witch so violent. Number 9. Bellatrix was the true heir to Slytherin's ideology. Voldemort spoke of blood purity, but only when it suited him. He himself was a half-blood. His obsession was not blood, it was immortality, control, domination. Bellatrix, on the other hand, believed, truly, madly. She didn't use pure-blood ideology as a tool. She worshipped it. To her, Muggleborns were filth, not enemies, not rivals, just creatures beneath notice. That belief ran deeper than any speech Voldemort ever gave. In Deathly Hallows, she panics when she sees the sword of Gryffindor in the hands of the trio. Not because it's powerful, but because it was supposed to be in her vault. A vault full of ancient, sacred things. She screams, "Who has been in my vault?" as if they'd touched something holy. To her, the family legacy, the bloodline, was sacred. Slytherin's vision wasn't just history, it was destiny. Bellatrix never questioned the system. She was the system, proud of the House of Black, loyal to old blood. She didn't dream of becoming a god like Voldemort. She dreamed of restoring the magical world to its rightful state, where only the pure ruled, where power stayed within noble lines. She didn't want to break the rules, she wanted to enforce the ancient ones. Number 10. Bellatrix was personally taught occlumency by Voldemort. Bellatrix sat before the Dark Lord in silence. Her eyes burned with hunger, not for praise, but for power. Voldemort paced slowly, his voice like a whisper in a storm. "Clear your mind," he said. "Not even Snape must see what's inside." That moment, imagined in shadows, fuels a theory fans can't ignore. That she wasn't just a follower, she was his student. He taught her occlumency himself. In The Half-Blood Prince, Snape never comments on Bellatrix's mind. He mocks others, even Narcissa. But with Bellatrix, he's cautious, sharp, controlled. He knows he can't break into her thoughts. He doesn't even try. Dumbledore, too, had no success. After Azkaban, she was questioned, but nothing came out. No names, no regrets, just silence and a stare cold enough to freeze fire. Voldemort valued secrecy. He trusted few, but Bellatrix proved herself, escaping Azkaban, killing without hesitation, and most of all, keeping secrets. If she was his occlumency pupil, it explains everything: her resistance, her loyalty, her terrifying calm under pressure. Occlumency isn't just about hiding truth, it's about weaponizing silence. That would make Bellatrix far more dangerous than most believed. She wasn't loud because she was mad. She was loud because it distracted. Inside, her mind was steel, trained by the master of manipulation, a mind that not even legitimacy could crack. She didn't just serve Voldemort, she reflected him. Quiet, shielded, deadly. Number 11. Bellatrix intentionally spared Hermione at Malfoy Manor. Hermione screamed. The echo of it bounced off the cold stone walls of Malfoy Manor. Bellatrix leaned over her, wand pressed against skin, voice low and cruel. "Where did you get that sword?" she demanded. But even as she tortured, she didn't go further. She didn't kill. That choice, deliberate and calculated, makes fans wonder. Bellatrix, known for her sadism, stopped short. Why? She had reason to hate Hermione, a Muggle-born, a close friend of Harry Potter, a girl who dared to defy her and live. And yet, Bellatrix held back. The theory says she saw Hermione not as a victim but as bait, something to hurt Potter without touching him. She knew Hermione was his mind, his heart. Killing her would end that leverage. Keeping her alive meant control. Even tortured, Hermione had value. Bellatrix snarled, "You're lying, filthy mudblood," but didn't finish her off. She wanted truth, but more than that she wanted fear. She carved the word mudblood into Hermione's arm. A mark, a message, something Harry would see, something that would haunt him more than death. Later, when Dobby apparated into the dungeon, Bellatrix screamed not in panic, but fury. Her prisoners were escaping, her tools were vanishing, the plan was slipping. Hermione's survival wasn't mercy, it was strategy. Bellatrix played the long game. And in her twisted mind, pain was power. Alive, Hermione could still suffer, and through her, so could Harry. Number 12. Bellatrix and Sirius hated each other even before the war. Sirius Black slammed the door of Grimmauld Place more times than he could count. He hated that house. He hated what it stood for. But most of all, he hated the people inside it, especially his cousin Bellatrix. Even as children they were at war. Sirius tore down family portraits. Bellatrix memorized the family tree. He laughed at tradition. She worshipped it. "The noble and most ancient house of Black," she once hissed, "doesn't need traitors." They crossed paths at dinners, pure-blood meetings, and in cold hallways of the Black estate. Sirius mocked her obsession with bloodlines. She called him a disgrace. Their arguments echoed through the house. Even his younger brother, Regulus, stayed silent when they fought. Bellatrix saw Sirius as weak. He saw her as mad. That hatred was planted early. Magic only made it grow sharper. In the Department of Mysteries, the past returned. Bellatrix saw him across the veil chamber. Her eyes lit up with something more than fury. It was personal. "Come out, little cousin," she sneered. Sirius grinned, but it wasn't playful. They cast spells like siblings throwing knives. No hesitation, no mercy. When her curse hit him, he fell into the veil, gone without a scream. And Bellatrix smiled, not for Voldemort, for herself. Fans believed that duel wasn't just a battle between Death Eater and Order member. It was the final strike in a lifelong war between two heirs of the same bloodline. Bellatrix didn't just destroy an enemy, she destroyed a rebel from her own house, a cousin who turned away from the name she clung to like armor. That moment wasn't about good or evil, it was family revenge, cold, final. Number 13, Bellatrix could have become the next Dark Lord after Voldemort. After Voldemort's death, chaos filled the air. The Dark Lord was gone, but his followers were not. Many scattered, others waited. But if Bellatrix had survived the Battle of Hogwarts, things could have taken a darker turn. She had the will, the rage, and the devotion, more than Lucius, more than any Death Eater left standing. She didn't follow Voldemort for power, she followed him like a prophet. That made her dangerous. In the Department of Mysteries, she duelled with cold joy. She taunted Harry, she murdered Sirius. "I killed Sirius Black," she sang triumphant, dancing away like a shadow. No remorse, no hesitation. She fought with fire in her veins. She wanted war. She lived for pain, and the others followed her. Even Greyback and the Lestranges obeyed her in battle. She had presence. She had fear on her side. The books never say Voldemort named an heir, but if he had, it wouldn't have been Draco or even Snape. Bellatrix had proven herself over and over. She broke out of Azkaban. She stayed loyal. She never questioned orders. When Voldemort needed someone to guard the Lestrange vault, He gave it to her. Not because he trusted her with treasure, but because he trusted her with secrets. Her death came too soon. Molly Weasley's curse struck her like a hammer. The room gasped, but some fans believe that if Bellatrix had won that duel, she wouldn't have run, she would have risen. With Voldemort gone, she would have become the flame that kept the darkness alive. A new dark lady, a queen of ashes. The war might have only just begun. Number 14. Bellatrix deliberately provoked Narcissa to test her loyalty. Bellatrix stood by the fireplace in Malfoy Manor, her wand clutched too tightly. Her eyes didn't blink. Her voice sliced through the room like a knife. "If you're not with the Dark Lord, Narcissa, then you're against him." Narcissa flinched, but she didn't answer. That moment, cold and sharp, revealed something deeper. Bellatrix wasn't angry, she was testing her, testing the sister she once trusted, testing the loyalty of the Malfoy bloodline. In Half-Blood Prince, Narcissa begs Snape to protect her son. Bellatrix follows, suspicious, hissing at her sister. "You're not supposed to seek help." But she doesn't stop her. She listens, watches, waits. Bellatrix knows Voldemort gave Draco a task too cruel for a boy. She also knows Narcissa might break. Her loyalty might crack. And if that happened, if Narcissa betrayed the Dark Lord, it had to be revealed now before worse damage was done. Fans believe Bellatrix's behavior was strategic. She wasn't lashing out at her sister from emotion. She was observing her under pressure. The stakes were too high. The Malfoys were slipping. Lucius had failed. Draco was fragile. Voldemort trusted them less and less. Bellatrix couldn't allow the weakness to spread, so she provoked, not out of cruelty, but as a soldier rooting out traitors. That night in Spinner's End, Snape swore the unbreakable vow. Bellatrix watched closely. Her suspicion didn't fade, but she let it happen. If Narcissa had shown even a flicker of rebellion, Bellatrix would have acted. But Narcissa passed the test. Barely. It wasn't love that drove Bellatrix. It was duty to Voldemort, above all else. Number 15. Bellatrix possessed an ancient form of dark magic, unknown even to Voldemort. When Bellatrix Lestrange stepped onto the battlefield during the Battle of the Department of Mysteries, her presence felt like a shadow falling across the room. Her spells were faster, darker, and more precise than any other Death Eaters. She killed without hesitation, laughed in the face of danger, and taunted her enemies with a theatrical cruelty that went beyond mere fanaticism. But some fans of the wizarding world have long speculated that her terrifying confidence came from more than just her devotion to the Dark Lord. A theory persists that Bellatrix had tapped into something older, darker, and more arcane than even Voldemort dared touch, a branch of ancient dark magic lost to time, revived in the solitude of Azkaban. During her 14-year imprisonment in Azkaban, Bellatrix did not wither away like many others. "The ones that love us never really leave us," Sirius once said. But Bellatrix proved that hatred can be just as enduring. While other prisoners lost their minds or curled into themselves, she remained powerful, pulsing with malice. Her escape alongside other high-security inmates marked not only a turning point in the Second Wizarding War, but the return of someone who had grown more dangerous in captivity. What if those years, instead of breaking her, allowed her to study secrets long buried by time and fear? Legends within pure-blood families whisper of pre-millennian magic, of enchantments etched into stone and bound by blood. These arts, it is said, were so vile and unpredictable that even the earliest magical communities destroyed or buried them. One such school of magic, according to fan speculation, was Lethifidian law, named after Lethifides, a medieval warlock known for spells that drained life essence, not through a wand, but through the soul's hatred. Some believe Bellatrix stumbled upon fragments of these teachings while reading old family grimoires hidden in the Lestrange vault at Gringotts. There is a chilling passage in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix during the Department of Mysteries battle that hints at Bellatrix's peculiar power. After Sirius falls through the veil, Harry charges at her, mad with grief. "You have to mean them, Potter," she shrieks after he tries to use an unforgivable curse. "You need to really want to cause pain to enjoy it. Righteous anger won't hurt me for long." Her words seem to come from intimate knowledge, almost like she's explaining a principle beyond textbook magic. This chilling instruction delivered with manic glee suggests that Bellatrix understood something most wizards didn't, the emotional core of dark magic. Her magic felt different. When Bellatrix duelled Tonks and Kingsley at the Ministry, she was outnumbered, yet held her ground easily. During the Battle of Hogwarts, she fought 3 skilled witches, Hermione, Ginny, and Luna simultaneously. None of them were novices. Ginny was known for her bat-bogey hexes and had duelled alongside the Order. Luna had survived Death Eater kidnappings. Hermione was one of the most brilliant witches of her age. Still, Bellatrix nearly overwhelmed them until Molly Weasley stepped in, and even then it was a duel of legends. Bellatrix's death came swiftly, but not without resistance. The spell Molly used to kill her was never named explicitly. And Bellatrix Lestrange fell to the floor dead, her eyes wide with shock. A woman who had danced around death, tortured for fun and killed without mercy, shocked. Not in pain, not in rage, but surprised. Why? What did she believe about herself that made her death seem impossible? One theory suggests that Bellatrix believed herself untouchable, not because Voldemort had favored her, but because she had begun walking a magical path so obscure even he hadn't dared follow. Tom Riddle was a genius and had uncovered many forbidden secrets, Horcruxes, Inferi, and the Elder Wand, but his approach to magic was often logical, calculated. Bellatrix, on the other hand, was emotional, intuitive, almost ritualistic. Her loyalty bordered on religious devotion, but what if it wasn't just about Voldemort? Some fans theorize that in Azkaban, Bellatrix performed ancient rites forbidden by the Department of Mysteries, things that required self-mutilation, madness, or communion with death itself. These rites may not have needed wands, only willpower and suffering. Dementors are known to feed on happiness and memories, but perhaps she used them in reverse, feeding them with the echo of her own pain until they became her protectors, not predators. Could this explain why Bellatrix never seemed weakened by their presence? There is no canonical spellbook that details the kind of magic Bellatrix may have used, but within the Tales of Beedle the Bard, Dumbledore mentions obscure variants of magic that manipulate more than just physical reality. In his commentary on the Warlock's hairy heart, he notes, even the most ancient magic can be undone, but some enchantments leave residue upon the soul itself. What if Bellatrix didn't just study dark magic? What if she became it? Her duels were always more vicious, more animalistic. She cackled, shrieked, and fought like a person possessed. Narcissa was cool and diplomatic. Andromeda rejected darkness altogether. But Bellatrix, she embraced it to the point where she was it. No other Death Eater ever showed the kind of raw, euphoric energy in combat that she did. This wasn't training, it was transformation. Some speculate that Voldemort, who feared death above all, refused to delve into certain magical areas that demanded surrender to it. Bellatrix, on the other hand, welcomed pain, chaos, and destruction. She didn't want immortality. She wanted power now. It is said that the darkest magics require sacrifice, not of others, but of parts of yourself. Bellatrix may have given pieces of her sanity, her empathy, even her soul, to achieve spells no one had seen for centuries. In Half-Blood Prince, Snape once said to Bellatrix, "You are, it seems, determined to hate me." But her hatred of Snape was irrational, obsessive. Not only did she doubt his loyalty, but she seemed to loathe something deeper, perhaps his style of magic. His detached, intellectual approach may have offended her more visceral, ancient instincts. Snape's occlumency was clean, clinical. Bellatrix believed in pain as proof. Number 16, Bellatrix intentionally targeted Dumbledore's most loyal supporters. In the flickering shadows of Number 12, Grimmauld Place, Sirius Black stood at the window gazing into the night. The Order of the Phoenix was at war. Behind every whisper in the dark, every disappearance, every mutilated body, there loomed the name of one woman, Bellatrix Lestrange. To the outside world she was a madwoman, a sadist, a Death-Eater gone wild. But what if that was only a mask? What if her cruelty was not senseless but deliberate? This theory has haunted historians and fans alike, that Bellatrix Lestrange systematically targeted Dumbledore's most loyal allies, not merely to serve Voldemort, but to break the very heart of the resistance. It began perhaps with Frank and Alice Longbottom. Auras, warriors brave to the bone, they had fought Voldemort's forces with a ferocity matched only by their loyalty to Dumbledore. When Voldemort fell in 1981, many of his followers fled or went underground, but Bellatrix remained. "The Dark Lord will rise again," she had screamed at her trial, her eyes blazing with conviction. Her loyalty was absolute, but it was not blind. When she tortured the Longbottoms into insanity with the Cruciatus curse, it was not vengeance, it was a message. She chose them not because they knew the Dark Lord's whereabouts, they didn't. She chose them because they were symbolic. They were Dumbledore's hand-picked soldiers. Breaking them meant shattering a symbol of resistance. Neville Longbottom, their son, grew up never truly knowing his parents. In Order of the Phoenix, he takes Harry to visit them at St. Mungo's, where they lie in hospital beds, forever broken. "She's the one who did it," Neville whispered, staring at the floor. Bellatrix Lestrange. That name was etched into his soul. And Bellatrix. She likely knew he would live to carry that burden. Her torture of the Longbottoms wasn't just an attack, it was legacy-level trauma intended to haunt the next generation of fighters. But it was the death of Sirius Black that cemented Bellatrix's role not only as Voldemort's instrument of death, but as a general in a psychological war. When she taunted Harry at the Department of Mysteries, "I killed Sirius Black," it was not simply pride, it was calculated cruelty. She didn't just kill him, she needed Harry to watch it happen. Sirius, his godfather, the last link to his family, his anchor, gone in a swirl of black veil and silence. Bellatrix could have killed anyone, but she aimed for the heart. She severed Harry's lifeline. Consider the moment itself. Bellatrix hurls a killing curse. Sirius falls through the veil. For a moment, Harry doesn't understand, and then he does, and then Bellatrix laughs. Come out, little Harry," she sings as he chases her. It's theatre for her, every move, every word. She doesn't just kill, she choreographs devastation. She wanted Harry broken, and she succeeded. For the rest of Order of the Phoenix, Harry is a ghost of himself. Dumbledore sees it. He tells Harry, "You care so much you feel as though you will bleed to death with the pain of it." That pain had a name, Bellatrix. Even within the ranks of the Order, her targets were not random. She gravitated toward those who had personal connections to Dumbledore. Emmeline Vance, murdered in 1996, was a senior Order member and Dumbledore loyalist. Her death was clean, efficient, and chilling. Snape later reveals that it was the result of leaked information, but who was the executioner? No one doubts that Bellatrix was involved. Her pattern is unmistakable. She doesn't just eliminate, she desecrates. Then came the assault on Bill Weasley. Though not a direct killing, the attack by Fenrir Greyback during the Battle of the Astronomy Tower had Bellatrix's fingerprints all over it. She had long taunted the Weasleys, calling Molly the blood traitor and mocking their loyalty to Dumbledore. "Your sons give me such trouble, Molly," she once hissed in a duel. "Perhaps I'll take one as a gift to the Dark Lord." Greyback's presence was no accident. Bellatrix had always used others to do her bidding, especially when it suited her flair for poetic cruelty. Bill, the eldest Weasley son, a promising Order member, and Gringotts Cursebreaker, was disfigured for life. And then there was Tonks. Nymphadora Tonks, vibrant and fierce, had everything Bellatrix loathed: love, purpose, defiance. Her marriage to Remus Lupin was a scandal to many in the wizarding world, but to Bellatrix it was an abomination. A pure-blood cousin marrying a werewolf? It wasn't just offensive, it was treason. At the Battle of Hogwarts, Bellatrix tried to kill her niece. Tonks fell, lifeless, alongside her husband. While Voldemort focused on Harry, Bellatrix continued her silent purge of the old bloodlines tied to Dumbledore and his legacy. Her obsession with the Black family name also played a role. She was born Bellatrix Black, sister to Narcissa and Andromeda. Andromeda married a Muggle-born Ted Tonks. Her daughter was Nymphadora. By killing Tonks, Bellatrix wasn't just killing a member of the Order, she was erasing a bloodline she deemed impure. Her actions were not a wild woman's rage. They were generational, historical, calculated. Dobby's death too carries the same chilling undertone. In Deathly Hallows, as Harry and his friends escape Malfoy Manor, Bellatrix hurls a knife. It strikes Dobby in the chest. Such a beautiful dagger too, she had said earlier, when threatening Hermione. She didn't aim for a fighter, she aimed for a symbol. Dobby, the free elf, the rebel who had defied his masters, embodied everything Bellatrix hated. His death wasn't a battle, it was a spectacle, a message. The deeper you look, the clearer the pattern becomes. Bellatrix didn't waste time on pawns. She struck bishops, rooks, queens. She left the pawns to fear her. Her duel with Molly Weasley is the climax of this vendetta. As Ginny is nearly struck by a curse, Molly steps in, screaming, "Not my daughter, you bitch!" Their duel isn't just a battle between two powerful witches, it's justice catching up with vengeance. And for once, vengeance loses. Number 17, Bellatrix knew that Harry Potter was a Horcrux. Bellatrix Lestrange was many things: mad, sadistic, and terrifyingly loyal to Lord Voldemort. But above all, she was intelligent, cunning, intuitive, and dangerously perceptive. That's what made her truly frightening. Many have dismissed her as a shrieking fanatic, blinded by her love for the Dark Lord. But what if her loyalty stemmed not only from devotion, but knowledge? What if she knew something no other Death Eater did, something about Harry Potter, something that changed everything? Some fans believe Bellatrix Lestrange knew that Harry was a Horcrux. And the deeper you look into her actions, the more plausible this theory becomes. Consider Bellatrix's behavior at Malfoy Manor in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. She is wild, yes, but not foolish. When Harry is captured and brought to her, she doesn't strike him down with the killing curse, despite knowing precisely who he is. Instead, she hesitates. "Is it true? Is it Harry Potter?" she hisses, her voice sharp with suspicion. She could have simply killed him, but she doesn't. She demands to know who he is, why he's there. Then she isolates Hermione and tortures her, desperate to learn why they were in her vault at Gringotts. Why such panic over a break-in? Because the vault held more than gold. It held one of Voldemort's Horcruxes, Hufflepuff's cup. And Bellatrix, more than any other Death Eater, knew what that meant. When Hermione lies about taking nothing, Bellatrix doesn't believe her. She turns to Harry and Ron, shaking, demanding truth. That panic is too intense for a mere goblet. It's as if Bellatrix knows the cup isn't just a prized possession, but a vessel of something sacred to her master. She had been trusted to protect it. No one else, not Lucius, not even Snape, had been entrusted with a Horcrux. That alone sets Bellatrix apart. Voldemort gave her the cup, and that reveals a chilling possibility. He trusted her with the darkest secret of all, the fragmenting of his soul. This is a woman who worshipped Voldemort. Her love for him wasn't mere infatuation, it was spiritual, all-consuming. In Order of the Phoenix, she cries to her cousin Sirius, "The Dark Lord has told me things. He trusts me, Black." She says it with pride, with fire. Voldemort trusted no one easily, not even Snape, whom he believed loyal for years. But Bellatrix earned something different, his confidence. If Voldemort told anyone about his Horcruxes, it would have been her. Why would he tell her about Harry specifically? It's possible he didn't, but Bellatrix might have figured it out on her own. She saw how obsessed Voldemort was with the boy. She saw him regain a body using Harry's blood. She watched Voldemort fail again and again to kill Harry, even when he had every advantage. And she knew how Horcruxes worked. She had guarded one. She had seen what they did. A flicker of recognition, of cold intuition, might have lit inside her as she pieced together the impossible. Harry wasn't just Voldemort's nemesis. He was part of him. That would explain Bellatrix's strange restraint in battle. In the Department of Mysteries, she's vicious, yes, but her attacks against Harry never seem fatal. She duels him, torments him, mocks him, but does she ever aim to kill? With Sirius, she didn't hesitate. She struck him with a killing curse so swiftly he didn't even have time to react. But with Harry, she toys. She waits. She studies him. In Half-Blood Prince, when she sets fire to Hagrid's hut, she avoids killing Harry in the process, despite having a clear shot. The only time Bellatrix ever appears truly eager to kill Harry is in the Battle of Hogwarts, moments before she dies, but even then she doesn't scream Avada Kedavra like she did with Sirius. She fights, duels, and then dies at the hand of Molly Weasley. If Bellatrix had known in that moment that the Horcrux inside Harry had already been destroyed, her actions make sense. Her rage is released. She is no longer restrained. Her last battle is one of desperate fury, perhaps fueled by the collapse of the secret she protected. There's also her obsession with Voldemort's purity. In the Half-Blood Prince, she chastises Snape for teaching Draco, warning that the Dark Lord does not trust easily. She spits the word trust like venom. Bellatrix doesn't trust others because she herself has been trusted. That is her currency, her status. She guards it with blood. If others were to know about the Horcruxes, especially that Harry is one, her value would diminish. It's possible Bellatrix resented Snape, not for doubting his loyalty, but because she feared Voldemort trusted him more. But the truth is, he didn't. Voldemort never gave Snape a Horcrux. He gave one to her. The Vault at Gringotts is key to this theory. Bellatrix's horror when she learns it's been broken into is primal. It's the only time we see her visibly unravel. She screams at the goblins, curses them, trembles in disbelief. And her reaction isn't just about stolen treasure. It's deeper, like someone whose church has been desecrated. The cup was sacred. Voldemort's soul was in it. Her panic reveals more than possession. It reveals reverence. But why didn't she ever tell Voldemort about her suspicions regarding Harry? Maybe she didn't want to. Maybe, in her twisted love, she believed Voldemort already knew. Or maybe she feared what might happen if he discovered that part of his soul had lodged itself in his greatest enemy. Bellatrix might have believed that such a truth would break him, that it was better left unspoken. We must also consider her behavior in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince when she visits Spinner's End with Narcissa. There, she pleads with Snape not to help Draco. "The Dark Lord has ordered the task," she says. But there's a catch in her voice. Fear, doubt. She senses something is changing, that Voldemort's soul is fraying, not just magically, but emotionally. She clings to what she knows, to what she guards. The cup, the secret. Harry, number 18. Bellatrix saw Voldemort not just as a leader, but as a messiah. Bellatrix Lestrange did not follow Voldemort out of fear. That was never her motivation. While others cowered before the Dark Lord, seeking power, protection, or out of sheer terror, Bellatrix stood in his presence with something far more dangerous in her eyes: reverence. To her, Voldemort was not just a dark wizard, he was a divine force, a messiah, a being sent to purge the magical world of impurity, to shape it anew. And she, in turn, was not merely a servant, but a disciple, a believer. When we first meet Bellatrix in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, her madness is evident. But it is a madness sharpened by devotion. "He will rise again and will come for me," she says in the Department of Mysteries, her voice trembling, not with fear, but with anticipation. This is not the speech of a follower, it is the prophecy of a zealot. There is no doubt in her voice, no hesitation, only certainty and hunger. The years she spent in Azkaban, locked away in isolation, did not break her. They sanctified her suffering. While others, like Avery or Nott, whimpered and begged for forgiveness upon Voldemort's return, Bellatrix only asked why it had taken him so long. "The Lestranges should stand here," Voldemort says in The Goblet of Fire, addressing his kneeling Death Eaters. "They went to Azkaban rather than renounce me." To him, it was loyalty. To Bellatrix, it was faith. She had given her life willingly, had tortured Frank and Alice Longbottom into insanity, not out of cruelty for its own sake, but as an offering. In her mind, it was a ritual. The destruction of traitors was a holy task, her wand a sacred instrument, her victims a sacrifice to the will of her Lord. There was no doubt, no guilt, no question. What she did for him. Even among the Death Eaters, Bellatrix stood apart. Lucius Malfoy played politics. Peter Pettigrew obeyed out of cowardice. Severus Snape walked a different path altogether. But Bellatrix had nothing else. No children, no real family left to love. Her husband, Rodolphus, was a fellow servant, nothing more. Voldemort was her axis, her son, her salvation. When she spoke of him, it was always with awe. When she looked at him, her eyes glowed with something deeper than adoration. It was worship. In Half-Blood Prince, this comes to a head when she confronts Snape. "You're being trusted with something that should have been mine," she hisses, furious at being passed over. It is not jealousy of power, it is outrage that her devotion has gone unrewarded. She does not understand strategy or caution. Her loyalty is pure, and she cannot fathom why that isn't enough. When Snape reminds her that the Dark Lord has commanded it, she submits instantly, not because she agrees, but because his will is law. The most striking evidence of her blind faith comes during the battle of the Department of Mysteries. There, in the midst of chaos and danger, she plays with death like a child with fire. "He knows I was the one who was faithful, not you," she screams at her fellow Death Eaters as they retreat. "He knows!" Her voice rises in a frenzy, manic and certain. She does not care that Sirius Black is there. She does not care that Harry is attacking her. All that matters is that Voldemort sees her loyalty, that he knows her heart belongs to him. This obsession reaches a terrifying crescendo in Deathly Hallows when she tortures Hermione Granger in Malfoy Manor. There is no political goal, no tactical advantage, only rage. Hermione is a Muggle-born, a symbol of the impurity Bellatrix believes Voldemort came to destroy. Torturing her is not just violence, it is cleansing. a ritual act to honor her lord's vision, a twisted sacrament of blood and pain. There are moments when even Voldemort seems to regard Bellatrix with unease. In Deathly Hallows, when she sits at his right hand during meetings, she is always eager, always watching him. "My lord," she breathes, "let me do it." Her voice trembles with excitement, not fear. It is the voice of someone who would slit her own throat if it pleased him, who would burn down the world with a smile if he so much as hinted it. Her death at the Battle of Hogwarts is almost poetic. She is not killed by an aura or by some powerful wizard. She is brought down by Molly Weasley, a mother defending her child. Bellatrix laughs as she duels, confident, frenzied, exultant. This is her final act of devotion. If she dies here, in service of Voldemort, then it is a martyr's death. When she falls, she does not die a villain. She dies a believer. What separates Bellatrix from the other Death Eaters is not her cruelty, but her conviction. While others followed Voldemort because he promised power or protection, she followed him because she saw him as the chosen one, not Harry, not Dumbledore. To Bellatrix, Voldemort was the true chosen one, the one with the power to cleanse the world, to raise it from the ashes. His snake-like appearance, his ability to defy death, his mastery of magic, they were not signs of darkness to her. They were proof of his divinity. Her faith is deeply mystical. She believes in prophecy, in fate, in blood. She believes that the world is meant to burn, and that Voldemort is the fire starter. She speaks of him as though he were beyond human, and in many ways to her he is. He has no equal, no peer, no friend, only worshippers, and she is his high priestess. Some fans have noted the language used by Bellatrix when referring to Voldemort borders on the erotic, but it is not lust in the conventional sense. It is something older, more primal, a union of souls, not bodies. She does not want to possess him. She wants to be consumed by him, to lose herself in his purpose. When she is near him, she is alive. When she is away, she withers. The comparison to a religious cult is not accidental. Bellatrix embodies the archetype of the fanatic. She is not rational. She is not strategic. She is not seeking personal gain. She is seeking meaning. In a world full of half-truths and compromises, Voldemort is her absolute, her truth, her God. J.K. Rowling never directly states that Bellatrix views Voldemort as a messiah, but the subtext is impossible to ignore. Her actions, her words, her expressions, they all point to something deeper than loyalty. They point to worship, a dark, unholy faith that drives her every decision. When Voldemort announces that Harry is dead in the Forbidden Forest, Bellatrix is the first to cheer. "Yes, yes, he's dead!" she cries, tears of joy in her eyes. It is the moment she has waited for, the prophecy fulfilled, the impurity destroyed, the Messiah victorious. She falls to her knees as though in prayer. Yet there is something tragic in her devotion. Voldemort does not love her. He barely tolerates her. To him she is a useful tool, nothing more. He does not comfort her or praise her. He does not share her zeal. He uses it. That disconnect, the one-sidedness of her faith, makes her story even more chilling. She is a woman who gave everything for a god who never looked back. There is a line in Order of the Phoenix that captures Bellatrix perfectly. When Sirius calls her by name, her lips curl in a smile that is all too familiar. "Come on, you can do better than that," she taunts, knowing she is about to kill him. There is joy in her cruelty, but more than that, there is purpose. Killing Sirius is not just revenge, it is an act of faith. He betrayed the cause. She is delivering justice, her kind of justice. Even her last words in the book are laced with fanaticism. "The Dark Lord will rise again. The boy will die at his hand." She shrieks as she is dragged away. The war is lost, the castle crumbling, her comrades dying. But Bellatrix is unshaken. Her belief does not waver. Even in death, she clings to the hope that her Messiah will triumph. In the end, Bellatrix Lestrange is not just a villain. She is a cautionary tale, a portrait of what happens when faith becomes obsession, when loyalty becomes worship. She reminds us that evil is not always cold or calculated. Sometimes it is passionate, devoted, blind, and that is when it is most dangerous. Voldemort sought followers. He found one true believer, and her name was Bellatrix, number 19. Bellatrix had her own secret informant inside the Order of the Phoenix. No one ever underestimated Bellatrix Lestrange's cruelty, but perhaps the world failed to grasp the full extent of her cunning. Behind those wild eyes and feverish loyalty to the Dark Lord may have lurked something even more terrifying: strategy. According to a theory growing in the corners of the fandom, Bellatrix had her own secret informant inside the Order of the Phoenix, someone whose identity was never revealed, but whose whispers shaped her attacks with chilling precision. And when one begins to examine certain events with this lens, the theory takes on an eerie credibility. Take, for instance, the ambush at Malfoy Manor. Harry, Ron, and Hermione were captured by Snatchers and brought to the mansion. An unfortunate coincidence, it would seem, that Bellatrix happened to be there at that exact time. But what if it wasn't coincidence at all? What if she had been tipped off? The way she reacted upon recognizing the sword of Gryffindor in their possession wasn't just shock, it was fury layered with something else: fear. "Where did you get this sword?" she screamed, her voice trembling. "Where?" She knew they were getting too close to something, and that their presence in her house wasn't random. The possibility that she had been tracking them quietly through a subtle stream of information suddenly doesn't sound so far-fetched. Now consider Neville Longbottom. During the Second Wizarding War, he became a leader within the resistance at Hogwarts. He organized Dumbledore's army when it would have been safer to keep his head down. Bellatrix, who had tortured his parents into insanity, was obsessed with him. Yet when the Carrows failed to crush the rebellion, one might expect her to come personally. But she didn't, because she didn't need to. Someone was already feeding her reports. The Death Eaters knew more about Neville's activities than they should have, right down to the room of requirement being used. That level of detail suggests more than mere guesswork or coincidence. The theory posits that her informant was not a senior order member, but someone overlooked, perhaps a young ministry worker who once had contact with the order, or an old Hogwarts student with ambiguous loyalties. It could even have been someone who had grown disillusioned after Sirius Black's death, someone who had once believed in the cause, but no longer trusted it. Bellatrix had the kind of charisma that could twist loyalty, and perhaps she didn't rely entirely on fear. There are many ways to seduce someone into betrayal. Let's revisit the night of the battle at the Department of Mysteries. The Death Eaters appeared to know too much. They knew which prophecy Harry had come for. They were lying in wait. Bellatrix led the ambush personally, yet it wasn't until she and her group arrived that chaos truly unfolded. He knows how to play you, the Dark Lord. He knows you would go to any lengths to save your friends, she taunted Harry. But how could she know that he was acting on a vision, that he would fall for that exact bait, unless someone from the inside told her just how easily Harry was manipulated through his heart? It's crucial to remember that Bellatrix was not a mindless brute. She was the Dark Lord's most trusted lieutenant, the keeper of secrets, the one entrusted with the knowledge of Horcruxes. Her knowledge extended far beyond the battlefield. She was cunning in a way few truly appreciated. There's a line in Half-Blood Prince that always seemed offhand, but when revisited strikes deeper. "She's mad, but she knows things," said Tonks grimly. "What things, and how did she know?" Some speculate that her informant was someone who worked in the Flu Network Authority, giving her access to who was moving where. Others suggest it may have been Mundungus Fletcher, the shady Order member with sticky fingers and loose lips. Mundungus was once caught selling Black family heirlooms to the highest bidder, and it's not hard to imagine him selling information too, especially under pressure. In Deathly Hallows, when Harry confronts him, he insists he only borrowed things, but what if Bellatrix had made him an offer he couldn't refuse? The moment when Xenophilius Lovegood betrays Harry to the Ministry also raises questions. Yes, he was desperate to save Luna, but the timing once again plays into Bellatrix's hands. Within minutes, snatchers descend. They seem particularly eager, and Bellatrix's arrival soon follows. Did someone tip her off that the trio might visit the Lovegoods? It seems she was always one step behind them, never far, never guessing, but knowing. At Malfoy Manor, it is not Lucius, nor even Narcissa, who takes the lead when the prisoners arrive. It's Bellatrix. She orders Draco to confirm identities, but she remains in command. When Hermione tries to lie about the sword, Bellatrix doesn't buy it for a second. "You have been inside my vault at Gringotts," she hisses. It's not a random guess. She had been warned. Someone told her that the Order was planning something, maybe even something involving her vault. And if someone was leaking to her, then that person had access to secrets the Order held close. During the infiltration of the Ministry of Magic, the trio uses Polyjuice Potion to sneak in, but the chaos that ensues afterward is rapid, too rapid. Their cover is blown in moments. Were they just unlucky? Or did Bellatrix have someone on the inside, a junior clerk who had been watching for signs of disguise, someone who knew Polyjuice was a favourite tactic of the Resistance? The theory becomes all the more compelling when you recall how efficiently Death Eaters began appearing at the Ministry in the days following. It's tempting to think of traitors as grand villains like Snape or Pettigrew, but often the most dangerous spies are the ones we overlook. An intern, a secretary, a clerk in magical transportation. Bellatrix, though unstable, was a veteran of manipulation. In her youth, she belonged to a noble house that prided itself on cunning. She had studied the politics of fear, charm, and coercion. Her rage in battle was not the tantrum of a child. It was the explosion of someone who knew far more than she let on. What about Dobby? The elf knew of Malfoy Manor. He knew who was being held there. Yet even he said, "You is not safe here, Harry Potter. You is being watched." Who was watching? The walls of magic were never the only thing spying on the trio. Human eyes were too. And maybe some of those eyes belonged to people they once trusted. Bellatrix's obsession with Hermione during the torture scene isn't just about cruelty. It reads like interrogation. "What else did you take?" she asked again and again. "Who else knows?" These are the questions of someone not trying to terrify, but extract details she already partially suspects. She's confirming information. She's following a thread someone had already handed her. Luna Lovegood, Ollivander and Griphook were all held in the manor's cellar. Each of them had information. The presence of these specific captives feels almost surgical. Luna for her father's connections, Ollivander for his wand knowledge, Griphook for the goblin secrets. Bellatrix wasn't just torturing people for sport, she was building a puzzle, and someone was giving her pieces. It's easy to imagine a conversation in a dark corridor, whispered late at night. "They plan to go to Gringotts," someone might say. "They think the sword is important. They think there's something in your vault." And Bellatrix, lips curling into a twisted smile, would nod. Let them try. Her vault was protected by a dragon and ancient spells, but also perhaps by betrayal. Even when she died, Bellatrix's attention was locked on a single target, Hermione. In the final battle, She dueled Ginny, Hermione, and Luna, but it's Hermione who earns her fiercest blows. Perhaps deep down, Bellatrix blamed her most. Perhaps Hermione had outmaneuvered her informant. Perhaps Hermione had found what Bellatrix had been trying to guard. Her death was not the climax of a madwoman's story, but the final act of a strategist whose network had begun to crumble. There is one more curious passage in the books. After Bellatrix dies, Voldemort's fury explodes, but it's not just rage at her death, it's panic. "Bellatrix!" he screams, and the ground trembles. Why such terror, unless she knew something he needed kept secret? Perhaps she took to her grave the identity of the one person who had betrayed the Order not for Voldemort, but for her. Ultimately, the beauty of this theory lies in its silence. It doesn't contradict canon, it lurks beneath it. Bellatrix Lestrange was not a creature of chaos. She was chaos weaponized by strategy. She fought with her wand, yes, but perhaps she also fought with secrets. And maybe, just maybe, one of those secrets sat beside Harry once, whispered encouragement, and disappeared before anyone knew they were gone. What if the true traitor was never caught? What if they're still out there, silent, their allegiance buried with the woman they served? Would you even recognize them if you saw them today? Number 20. Bellatrix used forbidden potions to enhance her magic. Bellatrix Lestrange was not simply a devoted Death Eater. She was a spectacle of chaos, a whirlwind of shrieking laughter, erratic gestures, and a deadly, precise wand. Her power was undeniable. But while many feared her for her sadism and allegiance to Voldemort, there was something else, something deeper, that set her apart from the rest of the Dark Lord's followers. She didn't merely fight, she relished it, as if something inside her turned every battle into a symphony of ecstasy. What if that something wasn't only her madness, but something brewed, swallowed, and secret? There are whispers among wizarding historians and fan theorists that Bellatrix may have relied on more than skill and training. Among the most chilling theories, she consumed powerful forbidden potions, ones perhaps concocted from Black family grimoires, lost to time and soaked in the blood of warlocks. These weren't your average draughts of courage or calming potions. These were ancient brews designed to remove fear, heighten pain tolerance, and induce a trance-like bloodlust. And Bellatrix, she wore their effects like a second skin. One can't help but notice her unrelenting energy during battle. In the Department of Mysteries, when she single-handedly held off multiple members of the Order, she seemed almost invincible. Even after killing Sirius Black, her cousin, she didn't retreat or mourn. She laughed, a high, piercing laugh that echoed down the halls. "I killed Sirius Black," she sang, and it wasn't grief or rage driving her. It was something euphoric. Her face, described in the book, was alive with triumph. Triumph after murdering family. A horrifying joy. Could that have been potion-induced? Unlike Lucius Malfoy, who hesitated and panicked when things went awry, Bellatrix never faltered. Even under pressure, she showed no hesitation. In Half-Blood Prince, she walked boldly through the burrow's flames during the attack on the Weasleys, like a woman possessed. Her laughter was constant, her eyes wild, her curses devastating. Kingsley Shacklebolt, a skilled aura, once said of her, "She fights like someone who has nothing to lose and everything to gain." We must remember that Bellatrix came from the House of Black, one of the oldest and most fanatical pure-blood families. Their motto, toujours pur, echoed through generations of obsession with power and tradition. The family vault at Gringotts likely held not only treasures but dangerous tomes, books never seen at Hogwarts. Among them could be the Ars Beneficium Nigrum, the Art of Black Poison, a rumoured alchemical journal written by Elidora Black in the 1700s. If it truly existed, and if Bellatrix found it, it would have offered her access to potions that bent the soul as easily as the body. One such potion, Furobellum, is mentioned in obscure 19th century texts confiscated by the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. It was described as a thick, violet liquid that granted the drinker heightened reflexes, suppressed fear, and a trance-like focus during battle, while also causing hallucinations and temporary madness. The symptoms bear an eerie resemblance to Bellatrix's behavior during the Battle of Hogwarts. While others faltered as the tide turned, she remained rabid in her pursuit of Harry and his allies. Molly Weasley, a mother and skilled witch, but hardly a duelist of Bellatrix's caliber, defeated her in the end, but not without immense difficulty. Before that iconic final blow, Bellatrix moved with such vicious grace that she nearly struck Ginny down. "Not my daughter, you bitch!" screamed Molly, and even then, Bellatrix was described as laughing, taunting, dodging curses like a dancer in a storm. It's not hard to believe that no ordinary witch could move like that, not without something coursing through her veins. And what of her time in Azkaban? 13 years locked in a prison that drove the minds of many men into crumbling ruin. Yet when she escaped, she was stronger than ever. No signs of weakness, no trembling hand, no madness that slowed her down, only the madness that propelled her. "The Dark Lord has returned!" she cried upon escaping, with eyes that sparkled like she had been reborn. Most Death Eaters emerged as husks. Bellatrix emerged like a phoenix of shadows. Severus Snape once remarked, "Time alone in Azkaban rots the spirit, not just the mind." So why not hers? Unless, perhaps, she had found a way to resist the Dementors, a secret stash of potions hidden by allies in her food, or, more disturbingly, a resistance built up before her capture, using the very concoctions that would later drive her in war. Some suggest she used Mentis Umbra, a potion derived from the dried wings of lethifolds and the essence of thestral blood, said to shield the mind from soul-suckers at the cost of mental clarity. Madness, then, may have been the price, and she paid it willingly. Another potion often linked to Bellatrix's rumoured practices is Heir Cordis, the Wrath of the Heart. Invented by dark alchemists during the early Grindelwald era, this potion was described in smuggled documents as one that could twist emotional energy into magical fuel. Rage became power, pain became fire, love, if any remained, was burned into ash. For someone as emotionally volatile and devoted to a single person as Bellatrix was to Voldemort, this would have been both intoxicating and damning. She wasn't just in love, she was consumed. Her duel against Hermione in Malfoy Manor supports this. Bellatrix, fearing Voldemort's wrath, tortured Hermione with brutal, manic intensity. Her rage wasn't measured, it was volcanic. Narcissa, her own sister, begged her to stop. But Bellatrix's eyes were described as glittering with the pleasure of control, and her wand moved with terrifying speed. Ron and Harry could hardly hold her off. This was more than practice, it was obsession, weaponized. Perhaps it was also Heir Cordis in full effect. The Black family were known for their experimentation. Phineas Nigellus, a former headmaster of Hogwarts and Bellatrix's ancestor, was accused in his time of harbouring banned texts in his office, including Tenebrae Elixiria, a book whose pages were said to shift shape unless touched with pure blood. Bellatrix may have inherited more than just hatred from her lineage. Perhaps she inherited knowledge. One can't overlook her erratic physical traits either. Her dishevelled hair, hollow cheeks and flickering pupils were often dismissed as madness, but they also resemble the side effects of prolonged potion abuse. In the world of magic, such damage is rarely accidental. Prolonged use of magical stimulants often leads to physical wear. The dueling high she seemed to ride. It was possibly not madness at all, but withdrawal masked by adrenaline. In Order of the Phoenix, during the final duel at the Ministry, Dumbledore traps her in a sphere of water. For a moment she panics, her eyes widen, but then, with a scream, she shatters it with dark magic. Most witches would collapse in fear before the headmaster. Bellatrix fought him off. Perhaps that scream was not fear, but the activation of some elixir taken in haste, pushing her magic to unnatural limits. Even Voldemort seemed to treat her differently. "You shall not speak of the boy," he once snarled at her when she dared insult Harry in his presence. She recoiled, but her madness didn't break. Most Death Eaters feared him utterly. Bellatrix adored him, worshipped him. What would such a follower do to gain his favor? Perhaps drink potions that eroded her soul, if it meant burning brighter in his gaze. There's also the curious incident during the escape from Gringotts. As she impersonates Hermione, Bellatrix's vault releases the Gemino curse, burying the intruders in multiplying treasure. When she later learns of the break-in, her reaction is not simply rage, it's panic. "They took something from my vault," she cries, the cup of Helga Hufflepuff. But what if something else was there too? A bottle, a scroll, a potion long kept in her family's care. Her panic seemed more than about a Horcrux. It felt personal. When she died, Bellatrix exploded into nothing. Killed by a curse from Molly Weasley, her death was sudden and spectacular. Yet no body was described, no twitch, no gasp. Only the words, "Bellatrix Lestrange fell and did not move." A final end, abrupt and eerily clean. Some believe her body combusted due to the volatile potions within. Her insides more brew than blood. A theory, yes, but not an impossible one. If we consider the idea that Bellatrix brewed her own concoctions, then the possibilities become even more terrifying. A skilled occlumens like Snape or an unspeakable might have sensed magical alterations in her, but no record shows such analysis. Why? Because few dared to look too closely. Because madness is a mask that hides more than just insanity. It hides preparation, obsession, sacrifice. Bellatrix. Lestrange wasn't mad for no reason. She may have chosen madness, may have consumed it, brewed it, lived it, a living cauldron of spells and chemicals. She wasn't just Voldemort's most loyal, she was his most altered, not human, not witch, but weapon. And in the end, that is what makes her unforgettable. Number 21. Bellatrix secretly despised Lucius Malfoy. She stood tall, her wild hair cascading over her shoulders like a black veil of contempt. Bellatrix Lestrange had never been one to hide her emotions, rage, passion, devotion. But there was something colder, more calculated in her eyes when they fell on Lucius Malfoy. Behind every sneer, behind every carefully measured word, there was a glint of disdain that no spell could mask. To the casual observer, they were allies, bound by blood, by belief, by the same serpentine loyalty to the Dark Lord. But for those who looked closer, something darker simmered beneath the surface. Bellatrix did not respect Lucius. She tolerated him. Their connection was as tangled as the Black family tree itself. Bellatrix, a proud daughter of the noble and most ancient house of Black, was married to Rodolphus Lestrange, a man more shadow than flesh, but it was her sister, Narcissa, who had bound her by law to the Malfoys. Lucius, that pristine, silver-haired aristocrat, had wed Narcissa in a union that was less about love and more about legacy. But Bellatrix, who burned with the righteous fury of a zealot, saw through the polish. She did not see a warrior in Lucius, she saw a politician. The first crack in their dynamic became visible after the fiasco at the Department of Mysteries. It was a battle meant to be glorious, a retrieval mission for the prophecy, a display of the Death Eater's might. But Lucius had failed. He'd allowed Harry Potter and his ragtag friends to escape. Worse still, he had let the prophecy be destroyed. For Bellatrix, this wasn't just incompetence, it was sacrilege. "You should be honored, Sissy," she once spat with venom during an unguarded moment in Half-Blood Prince, "that your husband still breathes after such disgrace." It was more than just a personal slight. To Bellatrix, failure in service of the Dark Lord was treasonous. She had gone to Azkaban for her loyalty. She had screamed his name into the cold night as she was dragged away in chains. She had never once wavered. But Lucius? He had faltered at the first true test of faith. When Voldemort returned, when the time came to act, Lucius had embraced the Death Eater mantle, not with fire, but with calculation. Bellatrix saw it. She saw that he wore the mask, but not the conviction. In Order of the Phoenix, during the battle in the Ministry, Bellatrix moved like a creature possessed, graceful, lethal, laughing through spells and screams. Lucius, on the other hand, clutched the prophecy orb like a merchant guarding his wares. His movements were panicked, his leadership flimsy. Bellatrix could barely conceal her contempt as she watched him bark orders that no one followed. She, not he, was the true leader that night. She, not he, held the loyalty of the others. And when the orb shattered, it was his hand that fumbled it. After that, Lucius became a shadow in his own manor. In Deathly Hallows, when Voldemort chose Malfoy Manor as his new headquarters, Bellatrix took command of the household without so much as a nod to Lucius. She strutted through its halls like a queen in exile, issuing orders, interrogating prisoners, her wand ever ready. Lucius stood to the side, diminished, nervously adjusting his cuffs, his eyes hollowed by fear. "What is it, Lucius?" she asked once, her voice like crushed glass. "Worried about your carpets?" It was a taunt, but also a truth. Bellatrix believed Lucius was more concerned with appearances than with ideology. His polished shoes, his silk robes, the way he clung to decorum even as the world crumbled, these were signs of weakness to her. In her mind, the only purity that mattered was devotion. And Lucius had none. He had ambition, yes, he had cunning, but he lacked fire. When Voldemort took Lucius's wand in Deathly Hallows, it was a symbolic castration. "My lord," Lucius had whispered, his voice trembling. "My wand." But Voldemort did not care. Bellatrix watched the exchange with veiled satisfaction. She knew what it meant. The Dark Lord no longer trusted Lucius. He had become disposable, a tool to be used, then discarded. Bellatrix had always believed this day would come, and when it did, she did not offer sympathy. She offered silence. There is a scene, brief but telling, when Harry, disguised as a snatcher, is brought to Malfoy Manor. Bellatrix is incandescent with suspicion and power. She demands answers, throws Hermione against the floor, draws blood. Lucius tries to intervene, but his voice is ignored. "If we're mistaken, Bellatrix," he begins. She cuts him off with a snarl. "If we're mistaken, we'll lose everything," she hisses. But the subtext is clear. "You have already lost everything, Lucius. Don't drag the rest of us down with you." Her insults weren't always verbal. Sometimes they were looks, daggers cast across candle-lit dinners. Sometimes they were small omissions, failing to mention his name when listing Voldemort's most loyal. Bellatrix would speak of Severus Snape's cunning, of Barty Crouch Jr.'s devotion, even of her husband's silence under torture. But never Lucius. His name was a ghost at her lips. He had not earned it. To understand Bellatrix's hatred, one must understand her soul. She did not crave power for its own sake. She craved purpose. For her, Voldemort was a messiah, the redeemer of a world gone impure. Her devotion was spiritual. But Lucius? He was a bureaucrat in a war of prophets. His allegiance was born of strategy, not love. And Bellatrix hated strategy. She despised half measures. To her, Lucius was a man who would sell ideology for safety, loyalty for luxury. He had no scars, and to Bellatrix that made him unworthy. Even Narcissa knew there is a coldness between the sisters, masked by pleasantries, but present nonetheless. Narcissa, protective of her son, often found herself shielding Draco not just from the war, but from Bellatrix's influence. When Draco was chosen to kill Dumbledore, Bellatrix offered to mentor him, but her methods were brutal, her expectations high. "He's just a boy," Narcissa had pleaded. Bellatrix's reply, "Then he will die like one." The look she cast at Lucius in that moment was scathing. "Your son is as soft as you." Bellatrix's disdain only deepened when Lucius began to falter in public. After the escape from Azkaban, after the failed attempts to seize Hogwarts, his reputation fell. He became a symbol of the old guard, pure-blooded but impotent. Bellatrix mocked this in private, sneering that the Malfoy name once stood for fear, and now invited laughter. "What use is your manor," she once spat, "if no one fears to enter it?" And yet she never acted against him directly. Perhaps it was the blood bond, perhaps it was the strategic need to keep him on a leash. Or perhaps, in her darkest corners, she enjoyed watching him rot from within. Every humiliation, every command from Voldemort, another nail in the coffin of his pride. Bellatrix, after all, loved cruelty. And what is more cruel than allowing a man to drown slowly, with his honor chained to his ankles? Her contempt climaxed during the final days of the war. When Voldemort demanded Draco's presence at Malfoy Manor, Lucius and Narcissa pleaded. They begged. Bellatrix watched with disgust. She had killed for Voldemort. She had tortured, bled, burned, and here they were, groveling. Her words were simple, but her tone lethal. "If the Dark Lord wants your boy, he will have him. Or would you rather disobey, Lucius?" Even in death her feelings were clear. Bellatrix died fighting, wand in hand, heart ablaze, screaming curses at Molly Weasley until the final blow. Lucius survived. He was not at the Battle of Hogwarts. He did not fight. He did not bleed. He fled with his wife and son, dragging his legacy behind him like a broken crown. For Bellatrix, it was the final confirmation. He had never belonged among them. He had never been worthy. Some fans argue that Bellatrix's hatred wasn't born of rivalry, but of ideology. That she saw Lucius not as an enemy, but as a symbol of everything wrong with the pure-blood cause, vanity without belief, status without sacrifice. Her loyalty to Voldemort was sacred. His was convenient. And in a war fueled by fanaticism, convenience is betrayal. The books do not state it outright, but they don't need to. The clues are everywhere, in glances, in silences, in the sharp edge of a word. Bellatrix, who would have died for her lord 10 times over, saw Lucius for what he was, a man who would rather host evil in his drawing room than fight for it in the mud. She didn't hate him for being weak. She hated him for pretending he wasn't. And so the legacy of the Malfoys is not just one of downfall, but of judgment, not from the world, not from Harry or Dumbledore or the Ministry, but from within their own circle, from Bellatrix, from the woman who laughed in Azkaban, who bled for her beliefs, and who, behind every cruel smirk, whispered the same verdict again and again. Lucius Malfoy was never one of us. Number 22. Bellatrix left behind a secret diary. It began not with a scream, but with a whisper, an echo lost in the walls of number 12, Grimmauld Place. Years after the war had ended, after the dust of Voldemort's reign had settled, the House of Black remained a place of shadows. Harry Potter, now a seasoned Auror, rarely visited the old home he had once used as a sanctuary. But the house remembered. And so did something else, something hidden, bound in leather, inked in obsession. Bellatrix Lestrange's secret diary had never been found. Until now, the theory had long existed among the darker corners of the wizarding world, whispered in Nocturne Alley, discussed in low voices over fire whiskey. Bellatrix, the fiercest of the Dark Lord's servants, had not only given her life for him, she had documented it. Fanatically loyal, dangerously intelligent, she had once been a top student at Hogwarts. She was a brilliant witch, Dumbledore once remarked, before her soul went chasing shadows. And brilliant witches often write, especially when they believe the world does not deserve to hear their thoughts until it's too late. The diary wasn't like Tom Riddle's, it wasn't a Horcrux, at least not in the traditional sense. It didn't possess a piece of her soul, but it did possess her mind page after page. According to rumours now investigated by Aurors, Bellatrix began writing during her imprisonment in Azkaban. Without a wand, stripped of everything but thought, she etched her memories using blood from her fingertips and the magic in her madness. When she escaped with the other Death Eaters in 1996, the diary came with her, hidden in the folds of her robes like a sacred relic. It is said that she continued the diary even during the war, hiding it in a charmed black case that could only be opened by someone who shared her blood. That detail, if true, is what makes the theory all the more dangerous. Narcissa Malfoy, her sister, has been questioned many times. Draco, now a father, insists he knows nothing of such an object, but Tonks, who died in the Battle of Hogwarts, was her niece, and Teddy Lupin, young, curious Teddy, shares that blood. What if one day he stumbles upon a box in the attic of Andromeda's home, sealed tight, humming faintly with ancient power? The contents, as imagined by those who dare to think of them, are terrifying. Not just spells, although Bellatrix surely knew curses that had been forgotten by time, but incantations twisted by her own rage, words spoken in reverence to Voldemort, whom she called my lord, with a devotion more intimate than fear. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, when she cries, "He lives in me, the Dark Lord lives in me," it was more than religious zeal. It was truth in her mind. And what if she had tried to bottle that devotion into something eternal? Kingsley Shacklebolt, the current Minister for Magic, once ordered a full search of all Lestrange properties. They found hidden weapons, some dark artifacts, and letters written by Rodolphus, her husband, in name only. But nothing of the diary, not in the Lestrange vault, not in the ruins of Malfoy Manor, not even among the tattered things left in Bellatrix's childhood room in Grimmauld Place. Creature, the old house elf, had once muttered about Mistress Bella's box before lapsing into silence. Whether that was truth or nonsense, no one knows. The creature is gone now. There was, however, one strange clue, a fragment of parchment found beneath the floorboards of number 12. It bore no name, but the handwriting was sharp, slanted, and unmistakably hers. He dreams in the grave, but I will wake him with the words they fear. The earth is not enough to hold his memory. The blood is not enough to wash him away. The words were signed with a single initial, B. That fragment now sits in the Department of Mysteries, locked behind 3 layers of enchantment. Hermione Granger, now head of magical law enforcement, has been the only one allowed to study it. "It's not a spell," she told the Daily Prophet, "but it feels like one. The ink is enchanted. The words shimmer under a revealing charm. There is magic in them, dormant but waiting. What it waits for, no one is quite sure. One theory suggests that the diary was designed as a guide, a path for a future disciple. Not to resurrect Voldemort, no. Bellatrix knew what Horcruxes were, and she wasn't foolish enough to try and replicate them, but she may have wanted someone to continue his work, to become a new vessel of his ideals, if not his soul. And she wrote for that person. She whispered into the void in hopes that someone would answer. A new Bellatrix to follow an old lord. Imagine the kind of mind such a book could poison. A young Slytherin, perhaps, ambitious, disillusioned with the ministry. Maybe a muggle-born witch, bullied for her heritage, who finds the diary in a forgotten alley in Nocturne. She opens it. The pages flutter like breath, the ink glows red. She reads words that speak to her pain and promises that through darkness she can have power. Bellatrix speaks from the grave, seductive and mad. They laughed at me too, but I turned their laughter into screams. There are whispers, even now, of strange, magical incidents near old Death Eater hideouts, flares of uncontrolled magic, symbols scorched into walls. A teenager in Manchester was found unconscious beside a burned sigil of the Dark Mark, but altered, twisted into something new. The auras suspect a prank, but the burn marks on the girl's hands suggest something else, something deliberate, something invoked. Some believe the diary might have made its way into the hands of the black market, not a shop, but a moving trade of dangerous artifacts across Europe. A Romanian wizard named Corvinus Marcu was caught with several cursed objects in 2023. Among them was a sealed case with a serpentine lock, and the initials BL etched on the clasp. When he tried to open it, the case exploded. Marcu lost 2 fingers. It hissed, he said, before going silent. It knew my name. Ginny Weasley, who once survived the influence of Tom Riddle's diary, believes that if Bellatrix's journal is real, it must be destroyed. You don't understand what those books can do, she told a closed Wizengamot hearing. You think it's just ink and memory, but it gets inside your head. It knows what you're afraid of. It turns your fears into obedience, into love, into hate. But how do you destroy something like that if it's protected by blood magic? If it refuses to burn? If it rewrites itself when pages are torn out? What if the diary wants to be found? What if it calls to those who are vulnerable and those who are angry? Andromeda Tonks, Bellatrix's estranged sister, remains silent on the matter. When asked if she believes her sister left behind such a diary, she merely said, "Bella was always good at hiding things, especially from herself." But others are less dismissive. Luna Lovegood, who now writes for The Quibbler, published an article titled "The Book That Bleeds, The Lost Words of Bellatrix Lestrange." In it, she claims to have seen visions during a divination experiment, visions of a black book crawling with thorns, whispering in Bellatrix's voice. "It sang to me," Luna wrote, in a language that wasn't English, but I understood it anyway. Is the diary real? No one knows, but the idea has grown teeth. It gnaws at the edges of the magical world, in quiet places. Children speak of dreams in which a woman with wild hair offers them secrets. Shopkeepers lock their doors tighter. Auras whisper of a code word, Thornbook. They don't say it aloud. Neville Longbottom, now teaching herbology at Hogwarts, recently reported that one of his students found a strange book growing beneath the roots of the Whomping Willow. When questioned, the child claimed the book called to her. It was blank at first, but ink began to appear when she touched it. "It said my name," she told Neville. "And it said his name, the one you're not supposed to say." The book was confiscated. Harry, too, cannot shake the feeling. Sometimes, in his dreams, he hears laughter, not Voldemort's cold high laugh, but Bellatrix's shriek echoing in the back of his mind. He wakes with the feeling that something is watching. "I don't believe in ghosts," he said recently, "but I believe in echoes, and I think Bellatrix is still echoing through the world. If the diary is ever found, it must be contained. But that is the question, isn't it? What if it's already too late? What if someone has found it? A girl in Durmstrang who now speaks in tongues. A boy in Ilvermorny who draws runes he's never seen. A whisper in a crowded room. A prophecy gone wrong. In the end, it may not matter if the diary was real or imagined, because the fear it has inspired is. And fear, as Bellatrix knew all too well, is the first spell of all. "He shall return," she once said, blood on her hands and joy in her eyes. "Even if he must be born through me again." The world watched her die. But what if she left something behind? Not her soul, not her body, but her voice. And what if someone is listening? Number 23. Bellatrix was ready to kill Voldemort if he ever betrayed her. Of all the characters that wander through the shadows of the wizarding world, few evoke the same mixture of dread and fascination as Bellatrix Lestrange. She is the embodiment of chaos wrapped in silk and madness behind a smirk. Yet even in the coldest of hearts there lies a spark of something unpredictable, and according to one of the most shocking theories among die-hard fans, that spark could have set fire to the very heart of the Dark Lord himself. The theory claims that Bellatrix, in all her obsession, was not just Voldemort's most loyal Death Eater, she was also his most dangerous, not to his enemies, but to him. It sounds impossible. After all, Bellatrix spent her life in service to Voldemort. She endured Azkaban, torture, humiliation, and near death with his name on her lips. She fell to her knees before him, eyes wide with religious fever. She called him "my lord" with breathless devotion. She murdered for him, tortured for him, lived for him. In Half-Blood Prince, she shrieks at Snape, "He is the Dark Lord. He has the greatest power, the greatest knowledge. He is a powerful, magical being who—" and is cut off only because Narcissa begs her to stop. That same woman, the one who burned with so much loyalty she seemed to radiate it, was also capable of imagining one horrifying possibility: Voldemort turning his back on her. There's an important moment in Order of the Phoenix, hidden like a whisper in a thunderstorm. After the death of Sirius, Harry and Bellatrix duel in the Department of Mysteries. In that chaos, she screams, "He will not be pleased. He will not forgive you for this." She's speaking of Voldemort, of course, and her voice trembles, not with fear for her own life, but with horror at the idea of disappointing him. That is the nature of her obsession, not fear of punishment, but fear of abandonment. The idea of being cast out by Voldemort isn't just sad for Bellatrix, it is unbearable, and that's where this theory begins. What would happen if Voldemort betrayed her? What if he chose someone else to take her place? Let's imagine it. Bellatrix has returned from some mission, bleeding, half mad, and finds Voldemort standing with another woman. Not a lover, he never cared for that, but a protégé. Someone younger, someone better. The rage that would rise in her would not be human. Because for Bellatrix, Voldemort wasn't a leader, he was a god, and gods, in her mind, were not supposed to need anyone else. In The Half-Blood Prince, we're told, her face was twisted with fury. She looked slightly mad. That was just a regular conversation in Snape's sitting room. Now imagine that same woman pushed to the edge by jealousy, rage, and heartbreak. Her pride would not allow her to bow to another. Not if Voldemort himself suggested it. And that's where the theory tightens its grip. Bellatrix could turn, not for redemption, not to save the world, but to destroy the man who dared to stop seeing her. Supporters of this theory often point to her behavior during the Battle of Hogwarts. She is the last Death Eater standing. Everyone else is either dead or fleeing, but Bellatrix fights to the end, not for victory, but for Voldemort's approval. Even as he watches, emotionless, she battles Molly Weasley like a woman possessed. But it's not just a duel. It's a performance. For him. When she dies, Voldemort's only reaction is a scream of rage, but not sorrow. And perhaps that scream wasn't just grief. Perhaps it was the fury of a man who knew she was dangerously close to losing control. There's also the matter of her madness. We often assume Bellatrix is simply insane, but madness is not a blank void. It has shape, it has focus. Hers was shaped by love, twisted, violent and obsessive love, but love nonetheless. Her devotion to Voldemort was the center of her world, and when that center is threatened, her reaction wouldn't be fear, it would be fury. "The Dark Lord will rise again," she snarls in Goblet of Fire. "Throw us into Azkaban, we will wait." It's not loyalty, it's worship. And worship doesn't fade. It either consumes or explodes. The theory also gains weight when we consider the twisted mirror that is Bellatrix and Narcissa. Narcissa, though a Death Eater by marriage, turns her back on Voldemort for the sake of her son. In the forest, she lies to Voldemort's face. He is dead. She risks everything. And Bellatrix sees this. She sees her own sister defy the man she worships and survive. That seed of betrayal might not grow in Bellatrix's mind yet. But it's there. Proof that Voldemort can be tricked, that he is not invincible, that love somehow has power over him. That idea alone would drive Bellatrix mad with contradictions. One of the more spine-chilling lines in the series comes from Deathly Hallows during the Gringotts break-in. When Hermione, disguised as Bellatrix, fails to act with enough cruelty, the goblins sense something is wrong. "She would have been harsher," one goblin hisses. Bellatrix, in the eyes of her enemies, wasn't just cruel. She was legendary, and legends often come with ego. Her pride, though hidden behind madness, was vast. To be second to anyone, even in Voldemort's eyes, would be intolerable. Even her death reflects this. She dies laughing, not from joy but from frenzy, from the overwhelming chaos of a world where she no longer knows who she is without Voldemort. Had she lived and seen him weaken, as he did when Harry walked alive from the forest, there's no telling what she might have done. A dying god is no god at all, and Bellatrix, faced with that fall from glory, might have reached for the only power she had left, revenge. A particularly chilling what-if offered by theory supporters paints the following scene. Voldemort, wounded, retreats to some shadowy place. Bellatrix, burned by betrayal or disappointment, follows him. Not with her wand drawn at first. No, she would come to him like she always had, quiet, reverent. Then she would kneel, then she would whisper, "My lord." And when he turned away, dismissive, distracted, she would strike. Not to win. She knows she can't win, but to punish. It's poetic, really. Bellatrix, the most loyal, becoming the most treacherous. Her betrayal wouldn't come from reason, it would come from pain. In Order of the Phoenix, she tells Harry, "Never used an unforgivable curse before, have you, boy? You need to mean them, Potter. You need to really want to cause pain, to enjoy it." And she does. That's what sets her apart. And that's what makes the theory so terrifying. If she ever wanted to hurt Voldemort, truly wanted it, she could. Of course, she wouldn't succeed. He is too powerful, too paranoid, but she would try, and she would not regret it, because in that moment she would feel something Voldemort never gave her: control. For once, she would be the storm, not just the thunder. And that thought is enough to give even the most hardened Death Eaters pause. There's also the matter of her name, Bellatrix. It means female warrior in Latin, not servant, not slave, warrior. She chose that path, and warriors, even the mad ones, have lines they will not cross. Being replaced, discarded, forgotten. That would be her line. If Voldemort ever crossed it, he would awaken not just a fanatic, but a fury. The books are careful never to give us a glimpse into Bellatrix's internal world. She is all flame, no reflection. But fiction leaves room for shadow. And in that shadow we see a possibility that her love was never just love, it was hunger, and hunger, once denied, becomes violence. If Voldemort had shown even a flicker of preference for someone else, someone like Barty Crouch Jr., perhaps, whom he praised as a faithful servant in Goblet of Fire, Bellatrix's reaction could have been catastrophic. She might have seen it as betrayal, as humiliation, and her fury would know no bounds. We must also remember Voldemort feared death above all else. But what if Bellatrix, in a fit of scorched earth madness, decided death was her only vengeance, not just her own, but his, not victory, destruction, the collapse of the world she had helped him build? If she couldn't have his favor, no one would. Like a jilted lover in a tragedy, she would bring the temple down on them both. In that final imagining, Voldemort stands in some dark hall, weakened, confused, and alone. Behind him, a whisper, "My lord." A wand, a flash of green, not from an enemy, but from the woman who once worshipped him as a god, the most loyal, the most broken, the most terrifying, because madness, when born of love, is the most dangerous kind of all. Number 24. Azkaban enhanced Bellatrix's magical powers. Of all the Death Eaters who returned to Voldemort after his resurrection, none radiated such raw, unrelenting power as Bellatrix Lestrange. When she emerged from the icy grip of Azkaban after nearly 15 years of imprisonment, she was gaunt and wild-eyed, but unmistakably stronger. Her first words upon return were laced with undying loyalty. "The Dark Lord will rise again, Crouch! Throw us into Azkaban, we will wait!" she had screamed at the courtroom as she was sentenced. But few realized then that her words were not just a promise of loyalty, they were a declaration of transformation. Bellatrix had entered Azkaban a fanatical servant, willing to torture in her master's name. She came out something else entirely. The time she spent within those cold, Dementor-infested walls did not break her spirit. It refined it. Stripped of all comfort, warmth, and even her wand, she had only her mind, her pain, and her fury. For most, Azkaban was a place where memories died. For Bellatrix, it became a crucible of rage in which she forged her own twisted evolution. Dementors, the soul-sucking creatures that guarded Azkaban, are known to feed on happiness, draining prisoners of their will to live. But what if one had no desire for happiness? What if one's very identity was built on suffering, on destruction, on a desire for vengeance? Bellatrix's madness, always simmering beneath the surface, became her shield. Where others withered, she thrived. Her hate was a furnace no Dementor could extinguish. In a darkly poetic sense, she became untouchable, not because she resisted despair, but because she embraced it. By the time she returned to Voldemort's side, there was a new intensity in her magic. During the battle at the Department of Mysteries, she did what not even Voldemort's inner circle had accomplished. She murdered Sirius Black. With a single, well-placed curse, she struck down the only family Harry Potter had left. It was not just brutality, it was precision, power, and a complete absence of fear. "He's gone," Harry heard her taunt, her voice mocking and almost jubilant. "You've got to mean it, Potter," she had hissed moments later when he tried to use the Cruciatus curse on her. "You need to really want to cause pain to enjoy it." Her words were not idle. They were a lesson from someone who had walked through the fires of madness and returned untouched. Bellatrix knew pain intimately, both receiving and giving it. In Azkaban, where there was nothing but the echoes of screams and the cold breath of Dementors, she had honed her soul into a weapon, and from this weapon emerged magic that was darker, deeper, and more instinctive than before, Take the duel in the Great Hall during the Battle of Hogwarts. Bellatrix moved like a phantom across the battlefield, cutting down anyone in her path. She faced 3 of the most formidable witches in the Order, Hermione Granger, Ginny Weasley, and Luna Lovegood, and held them all off effortlessly. Her spells were relentless, her reflexes lightning fast. She laughed as she fought, the joy of combat burning in her black eyes. None of them could touch her. Only Molly Weasley, fighting not with technique but with the raw fury of a mother, finally ended Bellatrix's rampage. But even then it wasn't a clean fight. Bellatrix duelled Molly one-on-one, trading spells that shattered the very air around them. "Not my daughter, you bitch!" Molly screamed, and with a curse that no one had seen her use before, she struck Bellatrix squarely in the chest. Bellatrix's laughter froze mid-breath. She fell with a look of shock, but not weakness. Even in death, she seemed invincible. It took the power of maternal rage to bring her down, and that in itself speaks volumes of what she had become. Before Azkaban, Bellatrix was ruthless. After Azkaban, she was monstrous. The prison, in some perverse twist of fate, had acted as a dark tutor. Deprived of the outside world, she had turned inward. She communed not with people, but with her pain. And from this communion came understanding, how to channel agony into strength. She learned to internalize the cruelty she had once inflicted externally. In the absence of light, she became a creature of shadow, one who no longer required validation or recognition. Her magic became an extension of her will, a reflection of her insanity. Some scholars of dark magic argue that Bellatrix's transformation was more than psychological. They believe she tapped into a rare and forbidden branch of spellwork, magic born from emotion. Unlike structured curses or incantations, this form of sorcery is raw, fueled by one's most intense feelings, grief, hatred, jealousy. These become tools. Bellatrix, whose heart beat with nothing but devotion to Voldemort and loathing for the world, became a vessel for this magic. No wand movements, no incantations, just rage transmuted into force. Voldemort himself noted the change. He trusted no one as he trusted Bellatrix. She alone sat beside him without fear. She alone was entrusted with guarding the most sacred of his possessions, the cup of Helga Hufflepuff, hidden within the Lestrange vault at Gringotts. This was not a decision made lightly. Voldemort, the most paranoid of all dark wizards, knew that only she was truly incorruptible. Azkaban had scoured away even the smallest doubts in her mind. She was his perfect disciple, and yet even perfection comes at a cost. Bellatrix no longer loved anything in the traditional sense. Her husband, Rodolphus, was a shadow. Her sisters, mere memories. She did not cry, did not reflect, did not mourn. All that remained was a singular devotion, an obsession with Voldemort so total it consumed every aspect of her being. This was her final gift from Azkaban, emotional obliteration. She had no fear because she had nothing left to lose. Dumbledore once said, "Do not pity the dead, Harry, pity the living, and above all, those who live without love." If love is the anchor of the soul, Bellatrix was adrift long before her incarceration. Azkaban simply cut the final thread. Freed from emotion, she was unshackled from limits. There was no fear of consequence, no dread of death, no hesitation. Her curses came fast and brutal. Her shields were instinctual. She moved not like a human, but like a storm. Even Snape, the most calculating of Death Eaters, tread carefully around her. Though he did not fear her intellect, he respected her savagery. Bellatrix, for all her madness, was not a fool. In Half-Blood Prince, she challenged Snape with a venomous intensity, questioning his loyalty in front of Narcissa. "The Dark Lord trusts him," Narcissa had said, but Bellatrix's eyes narrowed. "The Dark Lord is most pleased with the manner in which the boy meets his end, Snape replied. She didn't believe it, not fully. But she didn't strike. She knew better. Even a mad dog, after all, knows when to hold its fangs. And it is here that one begins to understand the true depth of her transformation. Bellatrix didn't just become a better duelist, she became a force of nature. The spells she used were not the mechanical performances of wand work taught at Hogwarts. They were expressions of identity. When she cast the Cruciatus curse, it wasn't to torture, it was to remind the world of who she was. Bellatrix of Azkaban, unbroken and unforgiving. There are those who still whisper about what she may have discovered within the prison's silence, forbidden runes etched into the walls, lost incantations muttered by inmates long dead, maybe even communion with the Dementors themselves. It's not impossible to imagine her standing at the edge of her cell, eyes locked on the grey fog beyond, whispering to the darkness, letting it fill her. Some claim she once withstood a full Dementor's kiss for hours, letting it hover over her without extracting her soul, simply because she had hidden it too well within layers of madness. This is what makes Bellatrix Lestrange terrifying, not her wand, not her allegiance, but her resilience. Her story is not one of redemption, but of evolution. She did not survive Azkaban, she conquered it. She did not leave weaker, she left changed. Azkaban was meant to destroy people. In Bellatrix's case, it forged a weapon. In the end, her downfall was not lack of power, but overconfidence. She had become so used to winning, so used to being feared, that she underestimated the one enemy whose love was greater than her hate. And in that final moment, as Molly's curse struck true, Bellatrix's eyes widened, not in fear, but in realization. She had reached her peak. There was nowhere else to go, no more battles to fight. She died not with a scream, but with the silence of a storm finally spent. And perhaps that is the cruelest irony of all. The woman who survived Azkaban did not fall to a dark lord, a prophecy, or a chosen one. She fell to a mother's fury, not because she was weak, but because even unbreakable weapons have a limit. Number 25. Bellatrix wore an artifact that protected her from most spells. Bellatrix Lestrange did not just survive the war, she danced through fire. During the Battle of the Department of Mysteries, while curses and hexes ricocheted through the air like shards of glass, she remained untouched. "Potter, you cannot win against me," she sneered, her eyes blazing with that manic glint, even as Sirius Black crumpled behind her. The duel should have drained her. She should have faltered when 5 teenagers and later members of the Order fought her. But she didn't. She stood tall, unburnt. Some said it was skill, others madness. But among the whispers of devoted fans and fanatics alike, a new theory surfaced, one that paints a darker, deeper portrait of the infamous Death Eater. Bellatrix wore a hidden artifact, a family heirloom possibly of black origin, enchanted with ancient protective magic. The most compelling clue isn't what she does, but what doesn't happen to her. During the encounter in the Department of Mysteries, Hermione Granger, a formidable witch even at 15, cast powerful spells that should have stopped or at least hindered her. Yet Bellatrix only taunted. "You're a baby in your cradle when it comes to the dark arts, Potter," she said, mockingly, ducking hexes as if they were no more than swatting flies. Not even a scratch marred her pale skin. While Dolohov was brought down and even Lucius Malfoy staggered from spellfire, Bellatrix seemed immune. Sirius Black's duel with her ended in tragedy, but not before he threw jinx after jinx with ferocity born of betrayal and grief. If anyone knew how to counter her fighting style, it was him, her cousin. And yet She killed him with a casual flick of her wand, slipping back into the shadows like a ghost. That duel was more than a family feud. It was a test of two opposing legacies, the rebellious black who chose light, and the fanatic who clung to the family's darkest traditions. But perhaps Sirius was up against more than a skilled duelist. Perhaps he was battling centuries of protective enchantments woven into something she wore close to her skin. Consider her ring. In the scenes where Bellatrix appears, notably at Malfoy Manor, she is often described with glinting jewellery. Her long dark hair hung in tangles, and her heavily lidded eyes stared out madly from a skull-like face. She wore a black dress, and on her finger gleamed a ring set with a dark stone. It was just a sentence, easily dismissed, but the ring appears again, described more than once during her scenes. Fans have pointed out that the stone's colour seemed to shift with light, a hallmark of magical gems, especially those infused with defensive spells. The Blacks were no ordinary family. Their legacy was carved into the very fabric of wizarding history. The tapestry that hung in number 12 Grimmauld Place boasted generations of pure bloods, many of whom dabbled in the forbidden, while Burga Black, Bellatrix's aunt, was a proud zealot of blood purity and would never have allowed a daughter of her house to walk into battle unprotected. It is said that ancient pure-blood families, especially the Sacred 28, possessed talismans, heirlooms passed through daughters to shield them. Bellatrix, being the eldest daughter of Cygnus and Druella Black, was likely the recipient of one such relic. If the artifact existed, it wasn't just a family trinket. It was enchanted with what some believed to be sanguis fidelis, a forgotten enchantment said to bond blood and magic. Descriptions from Magic Mot Evil, a restricted book once glimpsed in the Hogwarts library, speak of such enchantments that bind protection to the wearer's lifeblood, repelling harm like rain from a shielded cloak. The object had to be worn by one of true lineage. Impostors would find themselves scorched or cursed. Bellatrix was not merely proud of her bloodline, she weaponized it. What makes this theory even more persuasive is how her resilience surpasses that of other Death Eaters. In the Battle of Hogwarts, while others fell quickly under the onslaught of the Order and the DA, Bellatrix once again emerged as a whirlwind. Kingsley Shacklebolt, who held off Voldemort himself, had difficulty facing her. Even Hermione, Luna and Ginny together struggled to contain her, as seen in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. She turned her wand on Hermione, then Luna, then Ginny, and all three girls were forced to dive aside. For a witch in her late 40s, that level of agility and magical resistance borders on unnatural. There is something even more telling. When Molly Weasley finally confronts her, it is not a duel, it is an exorcism. Bellatrix fights ferociously, laughing, taunting, jeering. "What will happen to your children when I've killed you?" she shrieks. But even then she parries spell after spell until Molly hits her with a curse that struck Bellatrix straight in the chest, directly over her heart. And yet it takes several moments. Rowling writes, "For a second, Bellatrix looked as though she had been turned to stone. Then she explodes, not falls, explodes. This isn't how humans die from a standard curse. Bellatrix didn't simply collapse. Her body shattered, her magical core ruptured. Some theorists argue that this was the artifact reacting violently to its destruction. Molly's curse didn't just pierce flesh, it overcame something ancient and resistant. The explosion might have been the magical backlash from the protective artifact failing. That level of violence speaks to how powerful the object had been and how much it had absorbed over the years. Kreacher, the Black family's house elf, may have held clues. In Order of the Phoenix, Kreacher bitterly mutters about Bellatrix, calling her mistress and mentioning how she still wears Mistress Eladora's token. This line, mostly ignored, could suggest that Bellatrix inherited jewelry or clothing from Elidora Black, a fanatical ancestor known for preserving family purity by disowning half-blood relatives. If so, the artifact may have belonged to her originally and passed to Bellatrix as the most devoted Black descendant. Interestingly, there are parallels to this type of magical protection elsewhere. The locket of Salazar Slytherin, later a Horcrux, had strong protective enchantments. Even when not containing a fragment of soul, it repelled attacks and darkened the minds of those nearby. The magical community clearly possessed the means to create defensive talismans. Why would the House of Black, obsessed with legacy and defense against unworthy blood, not craft their own? Furthermore, Narcissa Malfoy, Bellatrix's sister, showed none of this magical resilience. During the Battle of Hogwarts, she doesn't even duel. She withdraws, her concern for Draco outweighing ideology. If Bellatrix and Narcissa both trained under similar conditions, why the vast gap in combative effectiveness? The answer may lie in Bellatrix's use of magical augmentation through artifacts. There's a visual language in the books when describing duels. Harry is often winded, bleeding, thrown across rooms. Voldemort, too, though powerful, recoils when magic hits. But Bellatrix? She glides, even when outnumbered. She screams, yes, but enjoy. There's no moment where she is described as doubled over, winded, scarred. It's unnatural, it's eerie, almost like she has a buffer. One quote stands out above the rest. In Half-Blood Prince, Snape tells Bellatrix, "You are, it seems, determined to dislike me, Bella." She replies, "I do not trust you, Snape." And when Snape bests her in verbal sparring, she spits, not hexes. This is key. Bellatrix, unafraid of pain or consequence, does not strike Snape even when provoked. Was it because she knew he could bypass her defenses? Snape, after all, was a master of dark arts. If she trusted in an artifact, she would only fear someone who could pierce its enchantments. Legilimency may offer insight as well. Voldemort trusted Bellatrix more than almost anyone. She alone knew about the Lestrange vault housing Hufflepuff's cup. He called her Dear Bella. But more curiously, he sent her into Azkaban with no concern of losing her mind. Most prisoners of the Dementors came back shattered. Bellatrix came back laughing. It was as if she'd carried something with her that kept her anchored. "The Dark Lord will rise again, Crouch." She had screamed at her trial, her voice filled not with fear but certainty. What could grant that certainty except an unshakable magical anchor? Even in Azkaban, Bellatrix never aged as dramatically as others. Her madness may have masked it, but physical decay, common in long-term prisoners, didn't consume her. Sirius had wasted away, others had died, but Bellatrix emerged intact. Her face was gaunt and skull-like, but her eyes blazed. Fans have argued that her gaunt appearance was more from obsession than starvation. The artifact perhaps preserved her vitality just as it shielded her body in combat. One must also recall that Voldemort gave her immense responsibility. He would not entrust his most valued possessions to someone fallible. The Lestrange vault held not just gold, but Horcruxes. Bellatrix was to him invincible, and perhaps she believed it too, not because of ego, but because she had tested her limits. In every duel, every battle, she danced through the killing fields untouched. You don't fear death when you've never tasted pain. So what happened when Molly Weasley broke that illusion? The final duel wasn't a clash of power, but of emotion. Molly, powered by motherly rage, didn't just attack Bellatrix's body, she shattered her myth. The explosion, the abruptness of death, wasn't just theatrical. It was the unraveling of the enchantment that had clung to Bellatrix like a second skin for decades. When it failed, so did she. In the end, The idea of Bellatrix wearing a dark protective artifact isn't just fan speculation, it's a lens that reframes her invincibility. Every untouched scar, every reckless charge into battle, every snarl of glee as others fell, it all begins to make sense. The Blacks were guardians of old secrets, and Bellatrix was their last chosen vessel. A ring, a brooch, perhaps a cursed pendant sewn into her robes. Whatever it was, it gave her the illusion of immortality, but illusions, like empires, eventually fall. Even the darkest artifacts burn under righteous fire. And when the moment came, when Molly's curse struck true, the ancient spell shattered, not with a whisper, but with a blast, loud enough to silence a legend. Number 26. Bellatrix suffered from a curse that made her lose her mind. There's a theory that has long haunted the darker corners of the wizarding world, one whispered in hushed tones in the shadows of Nocturne Alley and in the forbidden stacks of the Hogwarts library. It is the idea that Bellatrix Lestrange, the fiercest and most fanatical Death Eater in Lord Voldemort's ranks, was not always the madwoman we came to know. That her hysteria, her shrill laughter, her obsession, none of it was purely born from her choices or even from the horrors of Azkaban. Instead, there are those who believe that Bellatrix Black Lestrange was cursed slowly and deliberately until her mind fractured beyond repair. When we first meet her in Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, she erupts onto the stage like a hurricane of chaos, wild hair, deranged smile, eyes glowing with a madness too sharp to be natural. "The Dark Lord has returned!" she screams in the Department of Mysteries, her voice tinged with glee. But what if that glee was not truly hers? What if it was the echo of a curse singing through her soul? It's tempting to assume her madness stemmed from her years in Azkaban. 12 years is enough to break the strongest minds after all. But there's something peculiar about Bellatrix. The others, Avery, Mulciber, even her own husband Rodolphus, returned from Azkaban sallow, quiet, subdued. Bellatrix came back energized. "He will rise again and come for us," she cried during her trial, eyes blazing with a faith bordering on mania. Azkaban did not destroy her, it sharpened her. There's an old Black family tale, found in fragments in the journals of Phineas Nigellus Black, that tells of a curse laid upon the house centuries ago. It was said that a rival family, possibly the Prewetts or the Macmillans, inflicted a bloodline hex designed to rot the mind of the most devoted Black descendant in each generation. The symptoms: obsession, emotional instability, and a slow descent into magical madness. The curse was never confirmed, but if it lingered in the blood, Bellatrix, named for a warrior star and trained since childhood to revere her bloodline, may have been its perfect target. Consider her childhood, raised in the elite and rigid environment of the noble and most ancient house of Black. Bellatrix was taught the purity of blood mattered above all else. Her sisters, Andromeda and Narcissa, would later rebel in their own ways, Andromeda marrying a Muggle-born, and Narcissa showing hesitation and fear when faced with the consequences of war. But Bellatrix embraced the ideals completely, to a level bordering on fanaticism. A child raised in such ideological pressure could become passionate, but her passion twisted into worship of Voldemort, of power, of destruction. Was it choice, or was it something else? In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Snape describes Bellatrix as a devoted servant, certainly, but mad. He says it plainly, as if it were obvious. But Dumbledore, ever the seer of truths behind the veil, once said, "Curiosity is not a sin, but we should exercise caution with our curiosity." Perhaps he saw something in Bellatrix that others missed, a curiosity poisoned, a loyalty manipulated. The nature of dark magic is to corrupt, and Lord Voldemort was its master. He did not care for followers, he consumed them. Bellatrix, in her blind devotion, may have allowed him access to parts of her soul that no one else dared offer. The theory posits that Voldemort cursed her not to punish, but to bind her, to secure her loyalty so completely that she would no longer be capable of disobedience or even independent thought. It would explain the glint in her eyes, the cackling laughter that followed even the most horrific deeds, and the way she treated murder as amusement rather than strategy. Think of the duel in the Department of Mysteries when she strikes Sirius Black and sends him falling through the veil. Her shriek of, "I killed Sirius Black," is not triumphant in the way a soldier might boast. It is maniacal, theatrical, something out of a play for the insane. And then she runs, not because she fears capture, but because she fears what her master might say. When Voldemort appears, she falls to her knees, trembling. "My lord, forgive me," she cries, begging for approval like a broken marionette before her puppeteer. Could this be the behavior of a fully sane woman? In the Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, during the Malfoy Manor scene, Bellatrix descends to near madness at the possibility that someone might have stolen from her vault at Gringotts. "Who has been in my vault?" she shrieks, losing all sense of composure. Her reaction is disproportionate. Hermione had simply mentioned a sword, but Bellatrix's panic borders on psychotic breakdown. Her hands tremble, her breathing quickens. It is the behavior of someone on the edge, paranoid, unstable, and terrified of consequences far beyond what a simple theft might bring. This lends credence to the theory that her mind was not her own, that she existed in a constant state of magical pressure, like a glass jar filled with volatile potion, moments away from shattering. Voldemort may have kept her that way deliberately. There are spells, ancient ones, designed to fracture the mind while preserving functionality. The Casa Mentis curse, long banned by the Department of Mysteries, was rumoured to create a split within the consciousness, one obedient and cold, the other emotional and hysterical. Bellatrix, always swaying between cold efficiency and frenzied chaos, may have been its most well-hidden victim. Rodolphus Lestrange, her husband, was once asked by an unspeakable during a secret interrogation why Bellatrix never showed him affection. His answer? "She was not mine, she belonged to him." Some say he meant Voldemort metaphorically, but what if he meant it literally? What if she was bound to Voldemort not only by love or loyalty, but by a magical tether, one forged in secret rituals, spells that etched themselves into the soul? The Lestranges, after all, were known for dabbling in forbidden lore. The vaults of their family home in the French Alps held scrolls of pre-Merlin incantations, some rumoured to be written in the blood of seers. Bellatrix had access to these. Perhaps she tried something, perhaps Voldemort used one on her. In either case, the result could have been irreversible, a mind distorted by dark forces not meant to be wielded by mortals. Neville Longbottom's parents were tortured into insanity by Bellatrix's hand, and yet, as awful as it was, one wonders, did she feel remorse? Did she understand what she was doing, or was she already too far gone, lost to the currents of a curse she could no longer name? In Order of the Phoenix, when she mocks Neville, "You need more lessons, Longbottom," there's a flicker in her eyes. Some readers interpret it as sadism, others see it as emptiness. Madness doesn't always scream, sometimes it whispers. Her last moments are perhaps the most telling. At the Battle of Hogwarts, Bellatrix duels Molly Weasley. Her laughter is gone, her arrogance still intact. But she underestimates a mother's rage. "What will happen to your children when I've killed you?" she snarls, mocking, even as her death approaches. But here's what matters. She does not flee. Even as Molly casts the final deadly curse, Bellatrix stands her ground, smiling, defiant, unblinking. That is not bravery. That is detachment from reality. J.K. Rowling once said that Bellatrix loved Voldemort with a kind of obsession. Obsession is not devotion, it is sickness, and sickness can be induced. This isn't to excuse Bellatrix's crimes, but it may explain them. Perhaps beneath the mask of madness was a woman slowly unraveled by powers beyond her comprehension. Perhaps her soul was hijacked bit by bit by a curse laid centuries ago or a spell whispered into her ear by the only man she ever truly feared. There is something profoundly tragic in that possibility. That Bellatrix Black, once a brilliant, proud daughter of an ancient house, became not just a Death Eater, but a puppet of a darker design, that the fire in her eyes was not zeal, but the reflection of chains invisible to the world, that her laugh was not joy, but the last voice of sanity, trying desperately to scream before it was finally silenced. If you walk the halls of number 12 Grimmauld Place and stand before the Black family tapestry, you'll see her name burned there still. Bellatrix Black Lestrange. Not erased, not forgotten, her legacy remains a warning and a riddle. Was she mad? Or was she made to be? The answer may never be known, but the theory lives on, breathing through parchment, whispered through wandwood, etched in the cold stone where Azkaban once stood. And every time you hear her laughter echo in the pages of the story, remember, it might not have been hers at all. Number 27, Bellatrix, was a descendant of the legendary Dark Witch Morgana Le Fay. In the dim corridors of wizarding legend, where myth blends with magic, a whisper persists, a tale too ancient to prove and too alluring to dismiss. It speaks of Bellatrix Lestrange, the most feared and fanatical of Voldemort's followers, and her bloodline reaching back beyond the rise of the Dark Lord, past the founding of Hogwarts, and into the mists of Arthurian legend. The whisper claims she was no ordinary Death Eater. She was the last living descendant of Morgana Le Fay, the Enchantress of Camelot, the Dark Sister of King Arthur, and a sorceress who wielded power older than any known to modern wizardry. The Blacks have always prided themselves on their pure-blood heritage, but few ever questioned what that blood actually contained. It's known they trace their lineage back for centuries, carefully marrying within the ranks of other pure-blood families, the Rosiers, the Malfoys, the Lestranges. But some documents, hidden in the archives of the Black family's ancestral home at 12 Grimmauld Place, reportedly hinted at something far older and far darker, a name that appeared only in the most protected pages of the family tree: Morgana. The resemblance to Morgana was never addressed openly, but Sirius Black, before his death, once confided in Remus Lupin, "My dear cousin Bellatrix thought herself a queen. Perhaps it was because some ancient scrolls told her she truly was one." Legends say Morgana Le Fay, after her final clash with Arthur, did not perish in battle or fade into obscurity. Instead, she vanished into the enchanted Isle of Avalon, a place that many wizards now believe may have once been a sanctuary for the earliest magical beings, possibly even a precursor to wizarding society itself. Morgana, unlike Merlin, chose not to pass down knowledge in schools and books. She embedded it in blood. Curses, hexes, enchantments, gifts passed from mother to daughter, sealed in the marrow of bone and the core of magic itself. If this theory is true, Morgana's bloodline continued, hidden and protected by secret societies and ancient families, until it found its most violent modern vessel, Bellatrix. The magical traits that mark Morgana were not merely raw power. It was power intertwined with madness, seduction, cruelty, and an intoxicating blend of beauty and terror. Sound familiar? Bellatrix, described by J.K. Rowling as having a voice like honey, thick with madness, often displayed an unnerving joy in cruelty, much like the Morgana of legend, who was said to have enchanted entire armies into submission before casting them into eternal sleep. Both women, though separated by 1,000 years, radiated a darkness that wasn't taught. It was born. When Bellatrix tortured Hermione Granger at Malfoy Manor, something primal emerged, a possession of violence so pure it felt ritualistic. "You filthy little mudblood," she hissed, carving the word into Hermione's skin with her wand, not for interrogation, but for artistry. This wasn't a Death Eater performing a task. This was a woman invoking something old, something sacred to her blood, the sanctity of pain as a means of power. Historians of magical anthropology have noted that Morgana Le Fay, too, was known to mark her enemies, leaving magical scars that would ignite in agony during full moons, an ancient practice of identification and humiliation. The theory gained momentum when magical genealogist Cassandra Vole unearthed a 15th century Black family heirloom, a ring inscribed with a symbol not seen in modern wizarding heraldry, a silver serpent wrapped around a crescent moon. This sigil, according to Vole, matches one found in a preserved manuscript at the Library of Avalon, referencing the Moonborn Queen of Thorns, a nickname given to Morgana in pre-Arthurian Celtic writings. Bellatrix wore that ring often. In her trial before the Wizengamot, she was seen twisting it with a smile as she declared, "The Dark Lord lives within me." Perhaps it wasn't just Voldemort. Perhaps it was someone far more ancient. Morgana was a master of forbidden arts, and it's widely believed among magical scholars that her studies formed the basis of what would later be called dark magic. She did not consider her spells dark. To her, magic was neither good nor evil, but a tool. Bellatrix embodied that very ethos. To her, cruelty wasn't a vice, it was power. Dumbledore once remarked, Bellatrix Lestrange is proof that madness and intelligence are not mutually exclusive. And perhaps that intelligence, that visceral understanding of pain and control, was inherited, not learned. Bellatrix's particular talent for wandless and nonverbal magic also mirrors what the ancient texts say of Morgana. While Hogwarts teaches structured spellcasting, Morgana's magic was instinctive, built on emotion, memory, and heritage. Witnesses of the Battle of the Department of Mysteries noted that Bellatrix moved as if she danced through spells, dodging and striking with unnatural grace, predicting her opponent's movements before they made them. This could be coincidence, or it could be the resurrection of battle magic lost to time, the same kind Morgana used when she defended Avalon from the invading Saxons with just 3 spells and a whispered curse. There's more. In the Black family's private vault in Gringotts, a sealed scroll was discovered after the fall of Voldemort. It was partially burned, written in Old Welsh, and appeared to be a hymn or chant invoking the star-crowned heir of Avalon. The handwriting, cross-referenced by experts, bore alarming similarities to notes made by Druella Rosier, Bellatrix's mother. Was Druella aware of her heritage? Did she raise Bellatrix with not just pureblood ideals, but ancient Avalonian rituals? Is this why Bellatrix believed herself untouchable, superior even among Death Eaters?